Hello and welcome to the Ivan Show. This episode is dedicated to Dr. Sarah Bireete. Sarah Bireete is Executive Director, Center of Constitutional Governance. We are going to take a deep dive in Multiparty Dispensation and look at the atrocities, impunities, and mishandling of public funds which are being alleged in public and have a legal perspective from the Executive Director. Doctor, welcome to the show and thanks for allowing me to speak to us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, Doctor, before we take a deep dive in our main theme of today, I would kindly ask you to first tell us who is Dr. Sarah Bireete, apart from being Executive Director of Center for Constitutional Governance.
I am a simple lawyer and human rights defender, a lawyer with a bias in constitutional law and human rights. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Doctor, to begin right away, I want us to first talk about the Multiparty Dispensation, which was brought into practice on Thursday in July in 2005. Do you think the core values why this system of politics began are still being respected today?
Well, the major essence of multiparty dispensation is for diversity of political views. It's an opportunity to enable citizens to belong to parties of their choice, based on ideology, based on values, and based on their convictions. So multiple in simple language means many. So multi-party dispensation is a system where you have many parties competing for control of state power. For multi-party to take root, there are preconditions that should exist in any society or country. The first precondition is the rule of law. In Uganda, we have many laws on paper, but implementation is largely lacking. When you check our laws on paper, you could score them maybe at 80%. We have a few laws that are bad, a few provisions in the law that are bad and extreme and draconian, but the general legal framework in this country is good. The implementation of the good laws, unfortunately, seems to be on a lower side, and we have vigilance on the implementations of the fewer bad clauses, or laws like Public Order Management Act, like the Computer Misuse Act, Anti-Money Laundering Act, and other laws that take away the fundamental rights and freedoms of the people. The second precondition for multiparty dispensation to thrive is the existence of active citizenry. What do we mean by active citizenry? A group of citizens that have the required knowledge and skills to participate in governance. Citizens must know the basics. In the Constitution, for example, we have Article 17 of our Constitution on duties of a citizen. A citizen must take part in voting, must protect the vote, must fight corruption, must hold the leaders accountable, must make sure government property is not stolen or abused. So this is the citizen that then Article 1 talks about power belonging to the people. Who should exercise that power in accordance with the Constitution. But how many Ugandans know the Constitution beyond the name? How many Ugandans possess the Constitution, either soft copies on your smartphones or hard copies from bookshops?
By the way, Honorable, before you jump that point, citizens want to know, is it their constitutional mandate to have that Constitution freely or they have to buy?
The Constitution is for sale. The available copies are for sale. Government at the beginning of, after enactment in 1995 had free copies. The Constitution even mandates government to translate the Constitution into local languages and teach the Constitution to the people.
So that everyone
something they have
understands.
never done. They transferred the constitution once. I have seen a copy of the old constitution in Itesot. They translated this constitution once and dispatched fewer copies the early years of enactment and then stopped. Many Ugandans have never seen this constitution in their local languages. They don't know what is contained in them. And with the above 75% literacy rates, if Ugandans could read a simplified version of the constitution, then they would be able to make a critical mass of those active citizenry that can protect and promote constitutional governance. The third tenet for multiparty dispensation to thrive or any democracy are independent institutions. Institutions that provide the checks and balances needed for democracy to take root. Independence of the parliament, independence of the judiciary, independence of the electoral commission, independence of the Human Rights Commission, all these constitutional entities. The word independent stops on paper, including Bank of Uganda. All these institutions are supposed to be independent, but this independence stops on paper. We have a rubber stamp parliament that cannot check the excesses of the executive. We have a judiciary that is lukewarm. One day when it's a good day, it functions. Another day when it's a rainy day, it doesn't, protect the wishes and aspirations of the people as mandated under Article 128 of the Constitution. So you have these lukewarm institutions that cannot protect the fundamental rights and freedoms of the people to participate in their governance.
Doctor, this drives us to transparency, accountability, and non-corrupt in political parties. It is one of the aspects when they were starting up multi-party dispensation that they based on how it should run. But unfortunately, when we look at Parliament, for the past month, we have seen there is a lot of quarrels around money. Everywhere in each corridor, each side, each member pinning the other one for swindling money, for mishandling office. What is it that is transpiring at Parliament that cannot be controlled legally?
I think when we analyze corruption at Parliament in isolation of other organs of government, we lose it. If you look at the transparency and accountability reports by Transparency International, the corruption index reports, where Uganda scores very badly in East Africa even, the institutions that are usually named as most corrupt include police, courts, the judiciary, and now you can add Parliament given what we have seen. So it's a whole chain of institutions of governance that are ranked as corrupt, with the police taking the highest score most of the time. So when you analyze corruption as if it's only in Parliament, is to lose the point. Why do we have endemic corruption in the country? We have endemic corruption, we have total collapse of institutions of government, except that they exist and people draw salaries and you think there are some statutory obligations they are doing, but in actual sense of checks and balances or efficient institutions to protect the fundamental rights and freedoms of the people, we don't have these institutions as envisaged in the Constitution. President Museveni has largely kept himself in power through a system of patronage. Patronage is defined by corruption, by nepotism, by handouts, among others. So if you have a chief executive office of a country that is always bribing people, envelopes, sacks of money, bailouts for those who know can access him, what do you expect of other institutions of government? Not that it's justified, but corruption spreads like COVID, like any other disease. And we are at that level where every institution has degenerated. So you don't expect a miracle from Parliament. The IGGs on record have said that we lose 10 trillion every year, meaning that we lose a fifth of our annual budget every year to corruption. Is this money all in Parliament? Parliament uses only slightly less than $1 trillion of the budget. So where is the 10 trillion that we lose every year to corruption? That's why I'm saying that you can't look at Parliament in isolation. We are in a corrupt era.
Doctor, being the executive of Center for Constitutional Governance, how far are we as Uganda in terms of our civic space?
I think I've, in a way, talked about civic space under the rule of law principle that I explained. Civic space is basically the ability, the freedom of people to express themselves and participate in their governance. That includes freedom of media, freedom of NGOs, freedom of political parties. That's basic freedom of culture and religious institutions. That's basically the civic space that we are talking about. So when you have laws, for example, media, people fired without due process. You make a story, the self-censorship, and your editorial team says, no, we cannot air this, we shall lose revenue. You cover a story. There was one of your journalists at UBC who was fired for live coverage of a prime minister. I don't know whether he was reinstated or not. So these are the issues. We had at one time a suspension of 39 editors for live coverage of a convoy by Bobi Wine going to answer police summons. And the commission that regulates media said, why did you do live broadcast? You are inciting violence. So when you have a media working under media being beaten, even at the UN complex, media journalists, amazing, whipping journalists in broad daylight and at a global office. So that explains the civic space. You have the NGOs being closed, some without due process. You have political parties being conscripted in the capital state without funding. When they go, the other day I saw Dr. Kiza Besigye in Mbarara, the police is blocking a road, then later they say you can pass, as if the police has powers to order matters of life and death. Because fundamental rights and freedoms are inherent. The duty of the state is to regulate the enjoyment, but not to stop. But in Uganda, it's as if regulation means prohibition. And that is the nature of the civic space that we are in.
Now, Doctor, many Ugandans have now given up on a transition of power in another party, because with multi-party dispensation, we see that even opposition parties can go in government. But in Uganda, it looks as if it is going to transit from the father to the son. That's the picture that is on.
You are promoting that narrative. Transition in Uganda has been postponed. Peaceful transition of power has been postponed several times. We have transitioned by coups. We have, and now we have spent 40 years thinking that the 1995 Constitution should have made a difference. But why should Ugandans lose hope? Transition can only be delayed in Uganda.
You see, Ugandans are
but it will happen. Are they giving up on life? Because politicians determine matters of life and death. When you have laws with a death sentence, it means that a politician can determine matters of life and death that are originally supposed to belong to the maker. So if Ugandans give up on their destiny as a country, it's as good as giving up on life, or on living. Transition will happen. Whichever way it will happen, transition in this country will happen. Is Uganda a monarchy? No. We are not a monarchy, we are a republic. So anybody who professes by the slogan of Republic of Uganda, for God and my country, should know that Uganda will happen. and we are not a monarchy.
One of the main reasons why some Ugandans decide to give up is poverty. People are in extreme bad conditions. People have been even denied to support candidates of their choice. People have been denied access to know their rights. Here at the Center for Constitutional Governance, I believe we would be having a very big role you are playing to the public such that they can be somehow uplifted from this fear from the people in government and people with guns, because it is extreme. I don't know, because here at Intinda you may not see it, but when you go deep there in villages, people are just living. They don't know what is next tomorrow.
You see, 30 years ago, people in the villages would never call anybody in the capital to ask for food. They have land, most of them free. Why have they lost hope in living? For those who have land, what stops them from farming and having food to eat? I understand they had hardships they go through, but their crops you plant and 3 months you're harvesting and you can eat. But this prolonged, hopelessness, some of it is self-created. For those who live in the village and have land, it's laziness. For those who live in the village and have land, there are people who live in extreme conditions, like the Karamajong. Because even if they grow, the soils cannot produce. Those ones are, I understand the hopelessness. But somebody like from my district, from Western Uganda, you have land and you have no food. When there is a reasonable weather and you are able-bodied, do you think we should be discussing that really? From Western Uganda? No. If it's countries with extreme weather, harsh weather, poor soils, where you need fertilizers, you need really capital to harvest from your land, that I can understand. But there are people who have no excuse who need to get to the garden and work. This business of calling Kampala, now there is no money anymore in Kampala. The people who should be really hopeless should be the people in urban centers. Because without money in the state, you cannot live.
Absolutely.
But with the exception of Karamoja, other people should go to the garden and work. I have seen people who don't have land, because it's not that everybody has land. But they have spaces where they can rent and grow something to eat. So those should do that. I know that the removal of graduated tax made some of the village people, especially men, to just become drinkers. You wake up and all you think about is alcohol. I have seen there are areas with people who are heavy drinkers, like Apache, like Tororo, some people in the West. Because they have no obligation and they have left the bulk of the burden to run the families to the women. This is wrong. That one we should condemn. People with extreme weather, extreme conditions, they should be supported with methods like irrigation, like to help them be productive and have something to sustain themselves.
Doctor, comment on the size of parliament, because we see that in the next coming election, most probably we shall have even more MPs than we have today. However, we think the ones we have today are still many, given the prevailing financial burden the government commits itself to give those people.
I wish to call it the size of government. President Museveni has a cabinet of 81 ministers and 135 advisors, with a huge office, with RDCs, to the extent that State House consumes about 3 billion every day. And that's away from Office of the President, which has a different budget because it's a different ministry. That is excessive in a poor country like ours, even if it was a rich country. The president in the White House buys whatever he consumes in the White House. But our 3 billion every day, those are 6 seed schools, every day, gone. When you look at the size of government in general, ministries, ministers, agencies that we are now attempting to rationalize, all of it unnecessary. Most of our budget is consumption. It cannot go to developing the economy. Just consume. Tax people consume, waste in corruption, borrow, waste in corruption. With a little productivity going on in the economy, then Parliament now comes in, 559. An average of 80,000 Ugandans have an MP. That's too big for the size of our country and the size of our economy. Parliament should be cut by half. Cabinet should be cut by half. A presidential advisors, we don't need more than 20. The size of what the president consumes, his budget should be cut maybe by a tenth. A tenth is enough. Because why should you spend 3 billion every day? What are you doing? So all this government wastage needs to be dealt with.
Do you think we need constitutional reforms to shape this extravagance?
Extravagance needs to be tamed by leadership. The Constitution provides for 23 ministers and 23 deputy ministers, a total of 46. The president doubled it through extravagance and patronage to 81. So what constitutional reform do you need when the current provision is being abused?
So now you as you people who are fighting, who are legally fighting for observe the Constitution, what have you done?
But what can you do? It's not something you can chew with the Constitution. The Constitution limits ministers to 46, but you have 81. So what constitutional reform can chew that? It's President Museveni who needs reform as a person, either reform or retirement.
Doctor, you are telling me that now the Constitution is not working. It's there, but it is not working. If the Constitution states this, and the leader or the person in office does contrary, and is not affected by the Constitution, meaning surely Uganda, we are not running.
I said we don't have institutions for checks and balances. That's why you see you have those ministers, because they have been allowed by a rubber stamp parliament. But also the leader, why do you require those ministers? To do what? Ministries are run by technical staff.
I think because our president is in advanced age, he needs a large number to advise him.
What value has it added, other than wasting taxpayers' money? It's a waste. This money should go to teachers, this money should go to hospitals. This money should go into serving citizens.
Lastly, Doctor, but not the least, is it constitutionally right that 500 million, which was given, which is alleged that Honorable Mpuga received, is constitutional or not constitutional?
I don't know why the media is speaking on Honorable Mpuga. The money was given to all commissioners of parliament. Why do you single out one person?
Because
why don't you say the money that was given to commissioners of parliament? Was it given to him alone?
Okay. Doctor, thank you so much for the correction. Was the money given to commissioners of parliament, where leader of opposition then was part, constitutional or not constitutional?
The money given by parliament to commissioners is part of abuse because parliament determines its emoluments. We need to change the constitution and take away that power from parliament. And this money, dear listeners and viewers, was not given to one person. We must condemn everybody that was given the money. But most importantly, the institution and practice that awarded that money. Parliament should stop awarding emoluments to themselves. We need an independent entity that determines what politicians can earn and what facilitation they need to do their work.
Dr. Parting shots to the viewers on what we have been talking about as we conclude this show.
Democracy is about the people. As the original definition goes, democracy is for the people, by the people, and to the benefit of the people. The people must pay interest, great interest in what the leaders do, and should also develop capacity to check the excesses of the leaders and hold them accountable. That's when me and you shall enjoy being and living in this country under equity and with equitable services.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for a wonderful discussion and for comprehensively teaching Ugandans and those concerned who are not well versed with the legal framework of our country of what should be done. I am Ivan Tukundane, and this is The Ivan Show.